we do have a quorum, so we will start. It is 6:04 p.m. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Stanley White Recreation Center Advisory Committee meeting on Tuesday, February 2nd. On tonight's agenda, we have several things that we're going to discuss, and we're going to first start off by prayer, and Jennifer Emmons is going to lead us in that prayer.
All right. Dear Lord, thank you for this day, and thank you for this opportunity for us to come together and to be in your presence. And Lord, as we go through the meeting today, just give us an open mind and an open heart to know that your will for this plan for the Stanley White Recreation Center. And Lord, just please be with everyone, just to keep an open mind and to listen to everyone's opinions, that we will be able to come to a conclusion tonight. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Thank you, Jennifer. At this time, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There is an adjustment in the agenda. Staff has not completed the agenda minutes from the last meeting. There was a lot of back and forth information that we wanted to make sure that we captured, so that those minutes will be presented at the next meeting for approval. Before we get started with CPL, I want to go ahead and cover what the purpose of the Stanley White Recreation Advisory Committee is. This committee was appointed by the Board of Aldermen, and they are charged in an advisory capacity to perform the following responsibilities, and that is: 1, facilitate community engagement in the design and development of the new Stanley White Recreation Center and its integration with Henderson Park; to recommend Recreation Center services and programming for the new Stanley White Recreation Center and Henderson Park; to serve as a liaison between the city and the citizens of the community regarding the design and development of the new Stanley White Recreation Center and its integration with Henderson Park; and to recommend and promote alternative funding sources for enhancements to the Stanley White Recreation Center campus and Henderson Park. Now, I know that discussions have occurred regarding location. That is a sensitive subject with the community, but this committee is not charged with that. And so it is not our purpose, especially for this meeting, to focus on that. That is up to the Board of Aldermen to ultimately decide. One thing I want to go over is what's happened so far. So everyone knows that Stanley White Recreation Center was substantially damaged back in September of 2018. We went through the process with FEMA for the 428 mitigation grant. We applied for that. It took quite a bit of time to go through the steps for the approval for that. FEMA did approve the grant. Then we looked at, there were several alternative properties that came up during the process. 3 different properties. One was the George Street Park. The other one was the old Days Inn site, and then there was the Day Spring Church property. All those were deemed no one was interested in those for a variety of reasons. George Street, because the footprint was actually too small for a reasonable sized building, and some considered it to be out of the neighborhood. The other 2 properties were across Broad Street, and there were safety issues with that. So we received approval from FEMA. We also purchased property on the 3rd Avenue site. Once the property was purchased, the Board of Aldermen made a request to FEMA to change the scope of work for the alternate location. And that triggered an environmental assessment, which is what we have been going through since July or August of this year. And it was made clear at the last Board of Aldermen meeting that we were going to continue with that environmental assessment. And that is the city's purpose, to continue that until those results are complete, and then that information is presented to the Board of Aldermen to make a decision on how that would go. So with that being said, tonight CPL is going to make a presentation on the concept plan, and the goal is that this committee will make a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen on that concept plan based on the environmental assessment. So at this time, I'd like to ask Reggie Scales and Rachel Nielsen to start their presentation.
All right. Thank you, Foster, and
Excuse
good.
me, 1 second, Mr. Reggie. It's somebody waiting in the waiting area, and then did we do roll call?
I apologize. Jennifer, if you'll do a roll call.
Okay.
Thank you, Alderwoman Harris.
Leander Morgan Jr.,
Okay, Foster, we can barely understand you guys at the courthouse.
I can't understand him at all.
He's on mute.
Foster, whoever's at the courthouse, we can barely understand you guys.
Okay, this is Colleen. I'm going to increase the volume. When you're in the courtroom, your Zoom microphone has to be muted because the microphones in the courtroom are being fed into the Zoom meeting. But I will go turn up the volume now. 1 moment, please.
And another thing, Mr. Foster, do we have enough people for quorum? Okay,
Yes, we do have a quorum.
okay.
And let me do a quick test. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Am I
Yes.
coming in clearly?
Yes.
Very good.
Yes.
Okay, Jennifer, if you would like to go with the roll call.
Leander Morgan Jr., Talina Massey,
Present.
James Woods,
Present.
Bernard White,
Present.
Reginald Pender, Elijah Brown Jr.,
Present.
Barbara Lee, Curtis Stewart,
Present.
Jamisha Harris,
Present.
and Foster Hughes.
Present. Okay, Reggie, if you would like to, Reggie and Rachel, if you would like to start your presentation.
All right, very good. Good evening, everyone. Really an extension of your regularly scheduled meeting, so we're not going to pick off where we left off, but we are going to continue with that presentation, and Rachel Nielsen is going to do that. Before she gets back into that, just a couple of things. Number one, FEMA. There were a number of comments at the last meeting and specific requests for FEMA to respond to questions or things that were floating out there. My understanding is FEMA has done that. I've seen some of the email traffic. They have responded. Now, FEMA is not a part of this call tonight. I'm looking at the participant list. I don't see them there. So if there is anything that comes up directly related to their comments or responses, that needs to be put in writing and we'll send it to them. But we can't respond to anything as it relates to FEMA directly. The second part, I want to do just a very quick synopsis of what's happened since August and kind of where we are now, and then we'll get to Rachel. And a lot of this kind of goes to kind of what Foster is saying in terms of the role and responsibility of the committee. Our initial meeting, late August, we sat down and we said we focus on what goes inside the building, which is what we've done. As Foster said, the resolution establishing the advisory committee was pretty clear in terms of overseeing, facilitating the engagement, which you have absolutely done, serving as a liaison to the community, looking for alternative funding sources. Obviously, the two big things, facilitating the engagement and then being the liaison is a big piece in that. And so we had the focus group meetings, we had the online surveys, we gathered quite a bit of information. And so what you're seeing tonight, or what you'll see tonight, is part of what goes in the building, and the kind of that concept plan is a result of all the comments that we've heard. All right, and that's the first point. I guess the second piece in all of this is the environmental assessment And so from a project management standpoint, you have what are called critical path items, and those are things that really you can't move on to the next step until you accomplish those things. And so over the past month or so, we've been working with Foster and FEMA to establish what are those items that are going to be roadblocks or things that are going to help us move forward maybe a little sooner. The environmental assessment is in process, and we're working towards getting FEMA a draft soon. And once they get that draft, they'll take time to go through it, they'll evaluate it, they'll give us comments, we'll respond to it. And then the next step is there's a kind of a stepwise process where it has to go through review at the FEMA level. And so one review is at regional level, that's 30 to 45 days, and then the next review is the public comment period, which is about 30 days. When we started this process late fall last year, one of the key things we looked at was about a 4-month process. And we're still kind of in that space in terms of that 4 months. All along, our initial focus was getting something to the Board of Aldermen by late January, early February, and so we're on that track. We'll be able to provide you a pretty specific understanding of the EA process, I think, at your next meeting. So that's kind of where we've been and kind of where we're going and how we're trying to get there. So, do I have any questions right now before Rachel starts the actual presentation of the floor plan and what's going in the building? Okay, so I'm not hearing anything right now. So Rachel, you should be able to share your screen to start that presentation. We do want this to be interactive, so if you get any comments or questions, don't hesitate to raise your hand or chime in.
Okay. Can you all see my screen? Give me a thumbs up. All right. So the beginning of this is thank you all, is the presentation that we had gone through a couple of weeks ago. I will briefly go through all of it again, maybe not as in-depth as we did before, but feel free if you have questions, jump in with any of those. As Reggie noted, our process was that community engagement, first and foremost, and that was the majority of our time spent here has been on that community engagement. The programming, pulling out of that engagement, what the building program wants to be, and part of that has come from our meetings with the public, and that has come from our work session with you all. And then taking that program and building a conceptual design and site design. In terms of that engagement and the findings, we had a number of public meetings, we had a number of focus group meetings. The range of needs for the building are great. We want to make sure that we're feeding all parts of the community, all ages, and all needs, that we make sure that we're allowing for programming for future parks and recreation needs, as well as providing that neighborhood component for the connection with the neighborhood, for those networking events that you all have as well. The kids have been a focus of this project the whole time. We've kind of talked about that from the beginning, making sure that we're providing a space that is kind of future-proof, that we have some space that we will bring the younger kids to, and they will grow within this building for decades to come. And so one of those focus groups was with the youth, and they had a big focus, them, on having a variety of different spaces, having after-school type spaces, having activity rooms. Coming out of the surveys that we received and the engagement sessions, that court space is important. The space for both programmed activities and space for pickup basketball games, for open court, for different after-school items with the activities and game rooms. Making sure that there's flexibility to provide for, again, a variety of activities and programs, that we have the safety and security measures in well-lit outdoor areas. Community meeting spaces, the catering teaching kitchen, media room, walking track. And as I mentioned, we had a number of people on the surveys that checked every one of these items. And so finding a way to incorporate as much as possible into this facility. Programs and activities, a need for computer classes, cooking and nutrition classes, senior activity spaces, fitness and dance classes. And so coming out of that, we built this program. This program is built with input from the community, like all of that data that you saw. And then also that work session that we had with the committee was extremely crucial to putting this together. We talked through what the priorities were, the different types of flex spaces that were needed. We talked through restrooms and locker rooms, and all of that was really important in putting all of this together. Coming out of that, we put together a floor plan based on our expertise as recreation designers, and with that program, making the space as efficient as possible to get as many different programs and as much flexibility as possible into the smaller square footage in order to kind of give you the biggest value. I can zoom in on here too. Let's see if I remember how to do that. So we are showing 2 basketball courts, and that allows for 4 cross-court basketball games to occur, a multi-purpose room that can be divided into 3. So we could have 3 separate meetings, one larger, one smaller. That kitchen that allows for teaching, allows for catering to the multi-purpose room. We've included the screening room, a health screening room, as a lot of the community indicated that that was a really important item to include. Game room and a media lab esports room to allow for both sit-down, tabletop type games, and then to be able to provide for some of the more digital games or computer learning, computer classes. Moving upstairs, that the concept of the walking track came up over and over to have a safe space for youth as well as seniors to have a place to go to walk laps around there. And that's around both courts, so that's probably about approximately 10 laps to a mile. Also upstairs, we heard the concerns about needing to include a weight and cardio component. And so the weight and cardio room that we've included, which is right up here, is about 3 times the size of the one that was at the Stanley White Rec Center. So that allows for more equipment, more cardio equipment, more weight equipment, dumbbells, stretching areas, all of that. And then there is also a multi-purpose exercise studio for classes, or can also, again, this is another flex type space that can be used for multiple activities. Any questions on the plan or anything you'd like me to zoom in on at all?
Rachel, on the track, how many lanes?
3. 3 lanes around the track. And as Reggie mentioned, and as Foster mentioned, we are going through this environmental assessment process right now. Part of our directive for that environmental assessment is a concept plan and a concept site plan for the 3rd Avenue location. That is a requirement as part of the assessment. So we do have that in here as well. Sorry, I apologize. I thought that was the next slide, but So the look of this facility is meant to be something that is showcasing the community, that is inviting to the community, that allows for a direct connection to 3rd Avenue. This building would front on 3rd Avenue. Again, we're talking about that site concept on the 3rd Avenue site as because of this environmental assessment process. And really be something that allows for the neighborhood and the larger community of New Bern to access. So this would be the view looking at the facility from 3rd Avenue. And this would be the view looking at the facility from Broad/New Street. So lots of opportunities along the outside of the building for gathering as well. As I mentioned, we did need to come up with a site design concept for that 3rd Avenue site. We thought, based on all of our discussions, it was important to connect this building to Henderson Park as much as possible. And so we've included a connection point, a connection multi-use trail, and that is visioned as a 10-foot wide multi-use path so that you don't have youth walking down the street at all in order to get back and forth between Henderson Park activities or the recreation center. Also, we thought it was important that this facility reach into the community as much as possible, and that's the reason for the location of it, really sliding that building as close as possible to Henderson Park. And again, it's about, I think we said about 600 feet or so from Henderson Park to this property. And providing for much more parking at this facility, that allows for larger events to come and to use it. It also allows for any outdoor activities to happen. I know we talked previously about different kinds of blood drives or other things that would previously happen at the Stanley White Rec Center. And so it just gives a more opportunity and flexibility for the use of the site there as well. And just throwing this up there, those are the floodplain lines, in case anyone was curious about where that line is, that floodplain line along this property area. So at this point, we'd like
Rachel,
to hear...
can I ask you to go back to that previous slide so we can compare contrast and make sure everyone understands? Can you point out where the existing Stanley White Rec Center is located?
Right here.
So, yeah, and so you can see not only that site, but the entire park is located within the floodplain. And we'll touch on that just a bit more later, but you can go ahead.
So at this point, we'd like to hear any of your feedback on the plan, the look of the building, the vision of the building from the exterior, and on that 3rd Avenue site concept.
I do. This is Jennifer. I know a few other people have joined the call. I have you, Reggie, down as present. Is there anyone else who joined the call that I did not list off for the roll call? Okay, thank you.
While we're waiting for questions, just some of the things that are going to be documented in the EA. Number one, and I've heard this since day one, it is the situation with the existing structure, the existing Stanley White facility location, rather, the floodplain. And so I've gotten a lot of comments that if mitigation, if redesign, if cleaning out some of the existing infrastructure were done, then there would not be a problem with flooding in the future around that site. And the research that we have done, and again, this will be borne out in the environmental assessment, is even with all the improvements that are going on right now, the city is leveraging FEMA money, by the way, to do floodplain mitigation and improvements in and around that drainage basin where the facility is located. But even when that is done, it will not prevent flooding that has occurred in the past. So we'll just make sure everybody was clear on that. Another issue that we're documenting and working on documenting is connectivity between what would be that proposed site on 3rd Street and the existing neighborhood or community. You saw a little bit of that, Rachel, if we could step back to the actual concept plan that we put together. And so if everybody can see this, the blue structure would be the proposed new Stanley White facility. If you look to the right there, you see the existing apartments. And so if you see that trail that kind of winds its way through that property, and what could be water courses could be something different along that. But the plan all along was to make sure that the connectivity remains between the existing neighborhood and what would be a new facility. You can also see the neighborhood below what is that concept site plan. We are exploring and discussing what are some things we can do really to recommend. It's not set in stone, but what are some things that could be done to make connectivity between that neighborhood and the city, or to some things long term that we could do to invest in that neighborhood to possibly improve the transportation network for vehicles as well as for pedestrians. So those are some of the thoughts that have kind of gotten us to where we are right now. And again, it's, I think, imperative for folks on the committee to not only look at what is being evaluated here, but consider some of the other things that could be done or could be leveraged to support the community as a part of this process.
So a couple of questions I have. The trail that you're referencing here, is that kind of the sidewalk, or is it something that's going to be built? I know there was some conversation in regards to kind of like a historic type trail. Is that kind of still the thought process behind that? And is this an existing trail, or is this something that you have to kind of construct? Rachel, you want to touch on that?
That would be new. That would be new as a part of this project here. That property is city-owned property. That is indicated where that trail is. We would definitely welcome the committee's thoughts on where the best plan is to incorporate the historical aspect. The trail is certainly one part of that. We have identified parts inside the building, inside the lobby areas especially, that could be dedicated to the historical aspect. There are definitely opportunities for naming of certain spaces and for branding of certain spaces within the building to be branded potentially after people who have had significant impact on that Stanley White Rec Center and within the community in that regard. And there are a few components of the existing facility that were salvaged with the hopes to display them in some way within the new facility as well.
Got it. And then my last question, or for now, is can you pull back up the concept that you showed us here a minute ago? The inside the internal structure.
Sorry, the plan?
Correct. So I'm curious, as far as the layout is concerned, is there just the rationale behind so many office spaces there? Is what's the rationale behind? I think it looks like you guys have about, I don't know if this is staff offices, you have maybe about 5 of them. Is the thought that some of these folks will be coming over from the main campus that you guys have there by Lawson Creek Park? Is there a rationale behind all of the office space there?
No, Parks and Recreation Administration is going to stay where it is. That office space is for our athletic staff and programming staff that would be at the Stanley White Recreation Center. If those of you who have been to the Stanley White Recreation Center remember, the athletic staff was based out of there, but they were all in one room, a large room inside the gym, so that's basically the same amount of square footage, but each one of them would have an office.
So are you saying that the thought would be that so 5 different staff there would have 5 different offices, or would the staff be sharing office space there?
No, staff wouldn't share an office space. These are roughly 8 by 10 spaces.
Okay, understood. The back rooms here, behind the restrooms, what are those rooms there in the gray? And then you have one that's to your right-hand side there. Yeah. What are those back rooms there on the side, particularly the large one there? Is that storage space there?
Yeah, so all of the gray spaces are what we consider support spaces. Those are storage spaces, those are restrooms, those are other required building support spaces. So this large one here is a general storage space that would likely house tables and chairs for larger events, whether they be in the gym or larger events in the multipurpose. And then we have a larger gym storage room that can house a lot of the equipment needs for the gymnasiums.
And then is the elevator functional there? Is that kind of marked out there?
Yes. So if it is a 2-story building, which we are showing, there is an elevator requirement. And so that elevator would take you up to the 2nd floor. We've made the stair fairly prominent and right adjacent to it.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
I have 2 questions, Bernard White. It's one about the entrance, the cover. The entrance will be, as I saw it on the drawing, it'll be a covered entrance, right?
Yes.
Okay, and we had a walkway, and then we had the trail, and so when kids come, they'll be able to get off the bus without being out in the weather or in the rain.
Yes. So this entrance area over here is covered, and so again, the drop-off area here is covered.
Okay, we talked about the sidewalks. Now, there's some already sidewalks running from there all the way to the park, except for when you build a building. If you build a building there, they'll be able to come out. But I'm looking at this sidewalk. It's got like little ponds by it all on the side. What's the purpose of that? Was it for to drain water off, like from the apartments? What's the real purpose of that? We don't need to see a lot of ponds for our kids.
So the idea behind that concept is, as you mentioned, it is to contain that stormwater rather than pushing it all back towards here or flowing back through Henderson Park to provide another space for it to filter down in. And like I said, we are looking for your feedback on some of these items. And so if there are other components that you think are important to include within that connection corridor, we'd be happy to hear those.
I got a couple of things to say about that. On the other side of that street, there is a main drain, a main flow of water. And when they built those apartments, they put that retainer in the back there. And I explained to them once that what you're going to do, you're going to create a flood for Stanley White. Now we have the street is still coming down, or the water's still going to come down. What happens after it fill up? It's going to fill up. Can anybody answer that? The retaining pond is not going to hold that water. The biggest one we had over there couldn't hold it.
We can get you an answer on that. What I will say is, and the question that we really have to answer for you
Okay.
are these detention or retention ponds. In other words, it is not my understanding, we got to just check with the engineers. It's not my understanding these will be wet year-round. The other thing you want to keep in mind, the water is flowing, if you're looking at this image, to the right. And so when those facilities fill up, everything is going to be flowing to the right. So it's just FYI. But we can get you an answer on that. It's actually a very, very good question. Because what you're looking at here, these are concepts, a concept that has been put together, listening to what folks said, but also from an engineering standpoint. But now we're at the point where we need to get the real world feedback, which is what we're doing now for the committee. So the other thing I would ask you to think about, and Foster has been wonderful in kind of pushing issues and concepts and ideas. I think you folks are fortunate to have him driving this thing. But one of the things you want to think about is obviously honoring Stanley White, and somebody mentioned it being a historic trail or whatever the case may be. You can put kiosks or things along this trail, or you can actually have them in the building itself, right? So you've got some options there. What we call those hard and soft landscape elements, it's kind of a blank canvas right now. And Foster has actually asked us, this is a little bit later in the process, but he asked us to accelerate getting some concept photos in so we can see what's happening in and around the structure in the building. We can see it at the street level. The other thing that I'd ask the really advisory committee to think about, and you're not committing anything anywhere anyhow, is that facility is gone. You build it here. What should go on that site where the facility is located right now? What are some thoughts and opinions on that? Because we absolutely would like to reflect that as a part of the environmental assessment.
I'm not worrying that much about the facility. I'm thinking about the flow of the water, because after you do the driveways or the parking lot, everything else, that's more water gonna flow. It's not gonna solve it. It's not gonna soak into the ground. It's just gonna come right back down Chapman Street. You're gonna fill in that area, and the ditches around Henderson Park, they're gonna overflow. That's fed in from over there by Jack Smith Creek. So the thing about it, whoever's gonna handle that, I expect the city or somebody would put proper stuff in to make sure that it doesn't flood.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have to go through a permitting process with the city of New Bern. And so, yeah, there are not only those standards, but what's called CAMA, Coastal Area Management Act standards that have to be met in terms of the water flow, but also the infiltration and how that balances out. So, but we can get you as much information as we can at this stage of the design, and we'll follow up with you. The advisory committee, that is.
I'm good.
Mr. Woods has a question.
This is Elijah Brown. Excuse me. I'm on dial-up, so I'm blind to what y'all are talking about. Is there any way I can get the drawing that you have that you present to everybody else that's on Zoom?
This information will be on the Stanley White website. You can go to newbernnc.gov/Stanley White, and this information will be posted on there tomorrow.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Jennifer, this is James Woods. You guys were talking about a trail that's going from 3rd Avenue. This is Broad Street this way going towards Henderson Park. Are you aware that there's a sidewalk already that runs all the way down 3rd Avenue?
Yes.
Okay, so why would you put in a walking trail in your concept when there's already a sidewalk there?
Yeah, the idea is to better connect into, to have it feel more like it is one larger recreation parcel to connect that 3rd Avenue site to Henderson Park, and to have that connection really be recreation focused and community focused, as opposed to that green area with the trail, with the sidewalk. The other idea is like you mentioned, that's a sidewalk. I think it's a 5-foot sidewalk. It might be a little bit wider, but that's not the type of walkway that you see having multiple bikes on, pedestrians with bikes. The idea is to provide something that's much more pedestrian friendly, to again, better connect the community and the neighborhood to that other parcel in that center.
Also, with green space on both sides of the greenway, so to speak, you could have interactive things such as historical exhibits or fitness trail. You know, we've got the James Beckton fitness course right there at the entrance of the park, which is going to have to be updated because of its age, and so that would be a great way to just segue right into the park. Of course, all of that's yet to be determined, but that's just an example of what could be on both sides of the walking trail. And
there is a safety component involved where the further you separate pedestrians from vehicles, the more safety is incorporated. And so the idea, again, is to provide that safety aspect.
Let me just say that the key thing, though, is that the neighborhood.
Hold on, Reggie. Let me finish this. Okay, now I hear the safety aspect. I hear what Jennifer said about the safety aspect. However, that sidewalk has been put in there. If that sidewalk wasn't safe when they put it in there, then they should have never put it in there. It's a standard city sidewalk. I don't see, looking at this and knowing the area, how you guys are going to put a trail when you say, when everything I've heard is it's 600 feet from where the location of the current, where this concept plan is, to Henderson Park. 600 feet. So, in my mind, a 600-foot walking trail doesn't make sense if you already have a sidewalk. Now, if it was on the back side, maybe so, but not where I see it on this concept line, because there's a sidewalk already there.
So here's what I would say, and I'm getting a lot of feedback. I don't know if anybody else is hearing that. The key thing that we kept hearing was the importance of the facility to the neighborhood, but also that park. And so this concept really, the intent is an extension of Henderson Park. So if you see kind of the green space in and around that trail, it moves it away from what really is kind of a busy highway or busy roadway, rather. But it's kind of connecting it through green space to the existing park. So at least that was the intent.
I understand what you guys are saying, and I understand the concept that you're trying to portray. But you cannot extend something when you have an apartment building in the middle of both areas, in the middle of the areas that you're trying to extend. That's not an extension. I don't care how you guys try to spell it. It is not an extension. You cannot extend because you have that apartment building in the middle. Let's just throw the extension out. If you want to say you're putting in a walking trail so it's easy to accessible, okay, but it's not an extension of Henderson Park. It will never be because there's something in the middle of it that doesn't belong to the city.
This is a concept,
Hold
right?
on 1 second.
And so exactly
Reggie,
what you're saying,
Reggie,
Mr. Woods, these are
Reggie,
the comments we
Reggie.
need. What do you want to see ultimately when this thing is finalized?
Reggie,
Leave the sidewalk that's there. Don't try to enhance what's already there. Take that funding and either put it in Henderson Park or put it in the building.
can everyone hear me? We're getting feedback from someone. If everyone could mute their volume, unless you are asking a question, that would greatly help.
I think what Foster said is one of the phone numbers that's called in is providing a lot of feedback. If you could mute yourself if you're not speaking.
Hello?
Yes.
This is Barbara Lee. I have been online for a few minutes here.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. We've got you recorded. Can you mute your phone if you're not talking?
Ms. Lee, if you could mute your phone, your line when you're not, feel free to unmute and ask any questions, but just mute when you're not speaking so that we can hear Mr. Woods a little bit better. Thank you.
Okay, Reggie, Mr. Woods, you can continue, please.
No, Mr. Woods has the floor. He was giving us a recommendation.
Yeah, I was just recommending instead of calling it a walking trail, just leave the sidewalk there. Take that money that you was thinking about putting into that walking trail, either put it in Henderson Park or put it in a building, because there's a viable sidewalk already there that the residents of that area use day to day, walking the neighborhood. And I just don't see, on the concept, I don't get what you guys are trying to do with what has been said.
Thank you for
Yeah, thanks for the feedback. And really the concept was to make the connection with Henderson. That's why you're seeing it. It's to make the connection with Henderson Park, the green space connectivity, rather than putting people on the sidewalk on the roadway. That's it, long and short.
Question. I have a question.
Yes.
Getting back to the center, I saw the gym part. It was a multi-purpose floor. I know you said that was for different type events and everything. Well, what type of floor would y'all propose to be in there to keep it, with a lot of wear and tear on the existing floor?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. That's usually the type of thing that we get into a little bit later in design. But based on our experience with other recreation centers, we would recommend something very resilient, easily cleanable, easily kind of a tiled kind of system that can be replaced in a piece if something gets damaged. And we've seen things like luxury vinyl tile, LVT, as an example of something that could be within that space. Provides acoustical properties and cleanability.
All right, the next question, between those two floors, would that be a partition? Is that showing a partition, or is that just, what type of partition you're talking about? A folding one, or just a hanging curtain, or what?
Mm-hmm. Yep, great question. So yes, that is planned to be a partition, and it would be a folding partition. So it would be something with a thickness to it and acoustical properties, so that you could hold meetings in adjacent rooms.
I mean, on the gym floor. I'm talking about between the two gym.
That would be a curtain. That way, that space can be opened up into one space or closed off into two. And I would also, again, something we would look at further in design, but I could also see potentially another set of curtains that are able to divide the gym into 4 quadrants as opposed to just 2 parts to, again, enhance the flexibility.
One last thing, I heard someone say about naming, giving recognition to some of the people that did a lot during the center, and I think that's necessary, because a lot of people, not only myself, but a lot of other people in the community have worked hard in helping these kids and stuff, and I think they need to be recognized for that in some way, naming rooms after them or something like that, which I think is a good idea for that. But on the whole, looking at this, I think it's I like the design somewhat. You have to do a little nip and tuck and finalize and stuff, but I do like the concept so far. That was all I had.
Thank you for your input, and and for the comments on the naming spaces as well. I think that's definitely, as Reggie mentioned, that's one of those things that can be recommendations to the board as well from this committee.
Oh, and one last thing, I had talked to Stanley's wife not too long ago, and she had one request. I don't know if it can be done, but she asked to put his initial and his name, Stanley A. White, in there. I had talked to her some on Facebook a while ago, and she made that request, and I said I would bring it up at the next meeting. You know, she thought it would be better if it included his initial in there.
Okay. Yep, we can certainly do that, and we have put that on the outside of the building as well.
Yeah. All right.
You said Stanley A. White?
Yes, the letter A.
So just as we're looking at this, you bring up a very good point about Stanley White and other members of the community. Foster did ask us to go and look at the existing structure to see if there are things that could be pulled out or salvaged, and it was just very difficult to do that. But
and other things that I might do in there, maybe for a short period of pictures of stuff. I have pictures of some of the other old staff. They got a lot of different stuff that would be, you know, to put in there for some time. You know.
Well, you know, the recommendation was that there have some type of wall or space that specifically recognized and honored him, but just hearing you talk, it should be some of the other individuals who are kind of critical to the neighborhood in terms of where it is now. And so that's what we need to hear. Absolutely, yeah. But that's what we need. We need to understand, number one, who those people are, and number two, what they did, and then if there is memorabilia that we can take and include as part of the design.
Yes.
Do we have any other comments on the concept plan? All right, my next question is anyone on the committee interested in making a motion to recommend this concept plan presented by CPL to the Board of Aldermen for the purposes of the environmental assessment?
Bernard White speaking. Are we still waiting on the assessment, environmental assessment?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
So would anyone like to make a motion? All right, with no one interested in making a motion, we're going to proceed to the next item, discussion on repurposing materials from the old facility into the new one. So, Reggie, you started discussing that?
Yes. And so we did actually look at, you know, what are some of the things that could be pulled forward. A lot of the materials there are just, you know, they're basic materials. You've got the brick, but there's certain things you can and can't do with the brick. Really just kind of maybe the nameplate and some of the other things, that's pretty much the extent of it at this point. But we do need to spend some time really as we move forward into what's called SD or schematic design, where we're kind of focusing on what are those things that really kind of reflect how we honor Stanley White and the others. And some of you may have been to the International Civil Rights Museum in Greensboro. That's a great concept where as you walk through, you see some items and things and history. You can go as far as that, not necessarily turning it into a museum, or you can just have, again, just one space or one wall in the foyer where you come in to honor that. So those are some of the things that we can kind of flesh out as we move forward.
We will let you know that when we were dismantling the Stanley White Recreation Center, we did retain quite a few bricks. There was a frames in the building, the archway for the ceiling. We retained that. We also retained the signage as you walk into the building that had Stanley White Recreation Center, as well as plaques, and of course the portrait of Stanley White. And we do plan on reincorporating those things into the facility when that is rebuilt. Does anyone have any other recommendations of what you would like to see reincorporated?
Foster, this is James Woods. I think what Reggie brought up was a good idea of naming some of the rooms after community members that help. You know, I mean, I think that's the best way to honor the community is what Reggie said. What Reggie Pender said would be ideal. You know, he was a program director there or the center manager there for 10, 15, 20 years, however long it was. You know, maybe his name should go on the room. Maybe other folks that, you know, Pickett and those type people who had a lot to do with the children of that area and helping them when they were at Stanley White, and you could name different rooms after them. I think that would be a really, really great way of honoring Stanley White and those people that meant of the, you know, book and all of those folks like that.
I would have a follow-up question on that. As Reggie Scales mentioned, there is the ability to kind of do a kind of feature wall somewhere in here that incorporates that history, incorporates memorabilia and pictures. In addition, or in lieu of, there is the option to spread that feature wall out into maybe each of these branded rooms, each of these named rooms, and have a component within each of these rooms that speak to that person or the community in each of those. So there's an opportunity to kind of spread that history throughout the building or have it as a focal point when you walk into the building. And that's something that we can work through, but I don't know if there's any thought or any preference on or how you've been thinking about how that gets incorporated.
I really believe both concepts would be a great idea. You know, as you walk in, you have it on the wall that the rooms are named after these people, and when you go to that room, there's a small little plaque or something, board that says, you know, who that person was and why the room was named after them. I think that would be a great concept and I think the community would really like that. You know, history is a big part, especially for me, history is a really big part of who I am and what I am. So I think that's a really good calling card for the building.
Thank you.
I think it's a great idea. The next step is determining who those folks would be.
Any other comments on that?
Yeah, quick question, Foster. This is Selena.
Hi, Talina.
Hi. Is there a possibility to put a bear at the entrance?
Absolutely.
All right, that was one of the questions that I got too in the community was, could we put one of the New Bern bears out front in honor of Stanley White?
Yes.
If you can put a bear there, this is Bernard White speaking. Then you need to put a warrior there. Stanley White was a warrior. J.T. Barber, warrior, West Creek Braves. Him and all of them guys that went to the pros, that's where they came from. And Stanley White, first little team they had named over there, we call him Chief Stanley White, coached the Warriors. His team was named the Warriors. When I got a chance to coach, I got over there and I brought the Warriors back. Today, the name is still the Warriors, and they wear that same color. And before the name got back, after it been the Warriors, I had to go through some procedures to get it done through a lady named Nancy Bartop and Miss Pearlie Mae. Pinner know those people. So when I got back, when I got over there, I named them the Stanley White Warriors. That's what they're supposed to be in the book, the Stanley White Warriors. So you see that maroon and gray? That's the Warriors. So we can't change his colors.
Okay, what other comments do we have?
Just to piggyback on what Bernard was saying, and all through when we had the Pop Warners when the kids was growing up, that's what their colors was burgundy and gray, and they were known as New Bern Warriors. So I agree with them. That's what it should be. If you're gonna honor him, let's honor him right.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that there are the branding opportunities in terms of making this a community and neighborhood facility extend beyond the naming. It can be those colors as well. I know that those were the colors of primary focus at the old Stanley White Rec Center, and we can kind of take that into incorporation, whether that's interior or exterior. So.
Any other comments on that item? All right, so the next item I'd like to talk about is we received an email from the New Bern People's Assembly yesterday. That information was forwarded to the committee. They are planning on having a meeting on February 5th at 6 p.m. I believe it is a Zoom meeting. They have invited the committee. And you've got that information. I did inform the committee that I'm going to be attending a budget retreat with the city of New Bern, which is my priority, and if I were able to get out in time, I would join. If not, I would not be able to. But I didn't know if any other committee members would be interested in joining or not. And if you are, if you let me know, I'll share that with the group.
Foster, I will be on that Zoom call if our retreat is done.
Okay. Anyone else?
Foster, I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry. Say that one more time.
I said we received an email from the New Bern People's Assembly, and I sent that information to the committee yesterday. They are having a meeting this Friday the 5th. They have asked the committee to attend, to be able to, the goal was for the committee to share information that has been received and to take questions. And my comment was that we have a City of New Bern budget retreat that I have to attend. If I'm able to get out in time, I will participate. If not, then I won't. And Alderwoman Harris basically said the same thing. And I was asking if any other committee members would be interested in attending that meeting.
Got it. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm a part of the People's Assembly. I saw an email with that request. I haven't had a chance to talk to Antoinette in regards to kind of the spirit behind it, but I definitely can be in attendance to that, and I'm hoping that some of those same folks are on this call here tonight. I think I can't speak to the topic of conversation, but I would imagine it is a rebuttal from or questions in regards to what we discussed last week. And I would just offer, if it's appropriate, to be able to share the information that Chelsea sent over in regards to the responses to the questions.
And one thing I will tell you is that information will be posted on the newbernnc.gov/Stanley White site. We have posted several things on there. Her responses will be on there in the Q&A. As a matter of fact, I think the questions that we asked and that she responded to, or FEMA responded to, are currently on that Q&A. Some other things will be posted as well. So, as well as this presentation that CPL has provided, so you can refer anyone to that information.
So I don't know how productive that's going to be if I don't know. So again, I guess what I would offer is, are you going to be able to attend that call, Foster, or you have no idea at this point?
I will be attending the Board of Aldermen budget retreat. I don't know how long that will last.
Okay. Got it. If there's some follow-up questions, should we just point those to your direction?
Absolutely. If they have follow-up questions, we're happy to get the answers and respond.
Got it.
And I think you mentioned that the responses that were sent from FEMA, that those are being distributed publicly.
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, I guess Foster just said that. Yeah, I heard it loud and clear. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Does anyone else have any business you'd like to discuss this evening?
So Foster, can I give a quick recap and follow up?
I did have one question, Reggie, before you did that. Foster, did we address on the agenda? I know that on the last meeting we didn't get Rachel the opportunity to discuss the items from Stanley White that were being reused. Did we talk about that? Did I miss that? I know that was on the last agenda. Did you guys discuss that this time? I stepped away for a second.
Yes,
you did
we discussed.
Okay, I'm sorry. I must have missed it. I'm sorry.
As kind of a brief recap, and if you kind of want to take a look back at the recording for this, you can. There were some items that were salvaged. Those can be incorporated back within the building. What it sounds like from Mr. Woods and Mr. White and Mr. Pender is that the parts of the building may not be as important as telling the history of the building and telling the history of the people. So we talked a lot about naming of certain spaces and making sure that there was kind of description to the person and why that a space was named after them.
And I appreciate that rebuttal. I'll go back and look at that piece. I had to step away and was not in tune at that point. So thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Let me just do a quick recap, things that we need to follow up on. Mr. White asked for just a better description of how water is going to flow once I guess that final design is complete, if that site is selected. And so what happens, obviously, with the ponds if they remain there, but not just the ponds. If we don't put those in, what happens with the water flow? So we'll get you a response on that. That will also be detailed in the EA. Mr. Woods asked if we would take another look at where or how we have the trail design rather than moving away from the street where it is now and surrounding by green space, just possibly just leaving it on the street. So we can definitely take a look at that. Mr. Pender has some very good ideas as related to naming of rooms. So the next step there really would be, because I just think that's a home run, either way, I don't care where the building goes. But really the next step would be defining who those people are. And so I would just place that with the advisory committee to have some discussions, and by your next meeting, just potentially have either a direction that you'd like to see or some names that you would recommend. Mr. Lena asked that we look at a bear at the entrance, but we also had comments and concepts concerning Stanley White as a warrior, as a baseball player, and then the burgundy and gray color scheme rather, is something that will be incorporated into the design as we move forward. And just going back to one other thing concerning Mr. Pender, I think some of the recommended plaques be put in or near those rooms, which I just think is a wonderful idea, that basically details the history of those folks. So those are the key things that we're taking away. Kind of our next step here really is to go to the Board of Aldermen and make a full presentation. And your chair did make a motion earlier for the advisory committee to recommend to the Board of Aldermen that we at least evaluate this step as a part of the environmental process. And that motion essentially died for a lack of second, but I really wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page here in terms of what you're charged with, but more important, kind of your recommendation moving on to the next step. It doesn't define where the facility goes, but what it does say is that you've gone through the process of listening to the public, and this site is going to be evaluated under the environmental assessment for FEMA. So is that clear with everyone in terms of what's being asked? So you can look at silence in a number of ways, as a yes or a no. I'm not looking at it either way. If I can just get a comment from someone in terms of your thoughts or your opinions.
We've got a thumbs up from Mr. Woods. All right, if there are no other items to discuss, if anyone would like to make a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
I second it.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, folks.